The recent immigration raids have roiled Chicago communities, but they might also be making a handful of private contractors very wealthy. The Chicago Sun-Times did a recent investigation on a private detention company called CoreCivic, which has been saddled with complaints over the years but performed very well financially. That company is involved in the operation of the Broadview ICE detention facility. And joining us now with more is Professor Teresa Cordova, who has researched this issue and is director of the Great Cities Institute at the University of Illinois Chicago. Professor Cordova, thanks for speaking with us. You also wrote an op-ed in Crain's talking about the companies that are going to get very wealthy off of all these immigration raids and private contracts. Who are these companies?
You already mentioned CoreCivic, and the other major one is the GEO Group. And one of the things that's important to know about them is they both have very long histories. CoreCivic is the former Corrections Corporation of America.
So they changed their name.
They changed their name
because of lawsuits and complaints.
Lawsuits, complaints around forced labor, complaints about the conditions that people were experiencing. And there's a lot of folks throughout the country in small towns like Leavenworth, Kansas, for example, that have objected to even these facilities being in their communities.
But we do know that they have some role in the Broadview detention facility. What else do we know about that? I mean, no one's been able to go in there.
Yeah. Well, what we know is that this is big business, and it's an incredible business model because what they have done is found ways to obtain no-bid contracts, very lucrative no-bid contracts from the government, and then they lobby, not necessarily for particular policies, but they lobby for money to be spent this way, and then our taxpayer dollars then are funneled to these corporations to run these private facilities. What it means is, as private facilities, there is not that same relationship, that not same commitment to or sense of even accountability to the public, and this is one of the dangers of it by giving up the sort of the public function here and turning it over for a for-profit endeavor. That becomes their focus is profit and not necessarily public good. And
I think you were telling me before that there are different ways they make money off of folks who are being detained there, folks that might not have any resources.
It's amazing. Controlling the phone calls and how much you pay for a phone call, food service, medical service. Every aspect of it is either contracted or subcontracted within these groups. It's extremely lucrative. So just imagine every aspect of the supply chain and every service that's related to any kind of detention or incarceration is going to be an opportunity for them to make money.
All right, so you mentioned a few things, no bid contracts, and we also know that the recent quote-unquote big beautiful bill provided tens of billions of dollars in new funding just for Border Patrol, for ICE. Does that raise the concern of corruption, of insider self-dealing? We saw the reports about Border Czar Tom Homan accepting a bribe, allegedly. What are your worries on this front?
Well, my worries about that, we're looking at, let's say, for example, that within some of their profits, which are just in the first quarter for CoreCivic, for example, was $538 million. That's their profit. That doesn't include all the revenue that came in. That's the sort of the take home, all right, that goes to their stockholders. But then, and the GEO Group is almost the same amount of money. Half of that money is for detention. So we knew, for example, even 15, 20 years ago when we started to see some decline in the prison population, that they were going to be looking for other ways to be able to generate that profit and that revenue. And they went to immigrant labor as a way to generate. So all this hoopla that we're seeing, it's something that gets fabricated, it gets created as a way to justify this sort of profit-making machinery. And so in that sense, it's a great business model, right? In terms of how do you convince some people in the public that this is the way to go, right, at a time.
And we know the Trump administration it wants to really ramp up their deportation efforts, so there will be a lot of business. Calls to mind decades of talking about the quote-unquote military-industrial complex. Right. It seems like a similar dynamic. You at the Great Cities Institute have studied cities and how immigrants have impacted cities. What about these stepped-up raids, enforcement in Chicago, the fear? What do you believe this has done to the overall Chicago economy or will do?
See, that's a really important question because this is really hurting the Chicago economy. I mean, one has to wonder if that's by design. I mean, we even saw, for example, just this week, the Chicagoland Chamber of Commerce, the Civic Committee of the Commercial Club, and the Civic Federation. They all came out accurately observing, like knowing from their points of view that this is hurting business in Chicago. This is going to affect the tax base. It affects production of supply chain. It affects small businesses. We're hearing, for example, about all the numbers of small businesses that are potentially closing or who have already closed. So this hurts the Chicago economy. And this is very, very disconcerting.
And I don't want to stereotype, but what about areas like hospitality, landscaping, construction that do tend to employ larger numbers of undocumented immigrants? Will it slow down those areas?
Well, we've already seen some of that. We've probably seen some of the clips of people inside factories, for example, or inside warehouse looking around saying, look, where's my labor? My labor is scared to come in. They've been chased away, or there was just a raid. So what's important, I think you made reference to our reports, and we have demonstrated, for example, how key, not just Latinos, but including immigrant labor among Latinos, but also other immigrant labor, how they have fueled, for example, industries like construction. That's one of the big ones. You mentioned the hospitality industry, landscaping. The percentage that we comprise on the labor forces of those industries, for example, is huge. And so the importance of Latino labor specifically, but immigrant labor and immigrant Latino labor specifically, they have been jet fuel for the Chicago economy, for the region's economy, and indeed for the whole national economy. Yeah. So we're bound to take a huge hit to the economy, and we all have an interest in that. So this is a big concern that all of us should have. Why should some people be profiting off of human suffering and that is so widespread? All
right, Teresa Cordova, professor at UIC, director of the Great Cities Institute. We will follow your work there, and I do urge our viewers to read that Sun-Times investigation on CoreCivic as well. Thanks very much. We appreciate it.